Come on in, come on in close, come on in tight. Good. Um, we're good? Okay. I'm Jeff Anderson, and I'm one of the lawyers here today, along with Robert Pastor. And we're actually standing with a number of survivors and survivor advocates. But behind us, and also issued today, is a report. And we call it the Anderson Report because what it does is identify all the clerics, the priests who have worked and or been assigned in the Diocese of Phoenix, who have been publicly accused of child sexual abuse. Also, are pictures of these individuals who have been publicly accused. And also are the assignment histories that have been taken from the official Catholic directory. And why is it that we issue this report here today? It is the 25th report we have issued like this. And the reason we're issuing it here today and disseminating this information is that there has not been a full accounting by the Catholic Diocese in Phoenix of all the names that should have been disclosed by the Catholic bishops, past and present. Thus, we assembled all the public data that was available to us, in which each of these individuals have been accused of childhood sexual abuse, and assembled their histories that include where they worked, where they are assigned, and where they came from. In this report, there are 109 individuals, clerics of the Diocese of Phoenix. We know the Catholic Diocese has issued lists of 43. Why so many more in this report than what has been disclosed by the diocese? We believe, and for good reason, that they've underreported the identities and the histories that are known to them. We also know that the Catholic bishop has not released the identities of members of religious orders that were assigned by the bishops and allowed to work in the Diocese of Phoenix. And that includes 18 Franciscan friars, that includes 9 Jesuits, that includes a number of other religious order priests that have worked and been accused of child sexual molestation at some point in their ministry and publicly accused. And we feel that it is time. It is time for transparency, and it is time for disclosure. And this is our best effort to begin the process of full disclosure here. And we also know that from the work that we have been doing with survivors for so many years, there have been so many offenders moved and or transferred in and or out of the Diocese of Phoenix that we have been alarmed for many years and remain alarmed by the practices employed. The good news is there is now an opportunity for survivors by reason of the legislature and the governor signing into law a new law that gives survivors an opportunity and a chance to expose offenders and those that chose to protect them, and I'd like to invite Bridie Farrell to address that and the role that she had in that and why that is so important and how the doors have now opened in a way they have not. Why the doors have opened now in Arizona in a way they had not been opened before. So, Bridie Farrell, please. We're getting a little interference. All right.
Does the sound still pick up? Yeah, you guys can still hear me? All right. Thank you, Jeff. So, yeah, they're getting it. So, as many of you may already know me, my name is Bridie Farrell, and I have been fortunate enough to be visiting the state of Arizona frequently in the last couple months to work on passing the bill that was recently passed here in Arizona. I was sexually abused when I was 15 years old by my then speed skating teammate, Andy Gable, who was 33 at the time. The abuse didn't occur once, it occurred hundreds of times over many, many months. And the thing is that US speed skating knew about Andy Gable before I ever met him. And our paths should have never crossed. It's because of that negligence by that national governing body of US speed skating that I came to Arizona. And I read about yours truly, your Senator Paul Boyer, who is truly a hero in this fight. I read about Paul Boyer's efforts and his dedication to protect children, to do whatever was needed to end child sexual abuse and actually stand up for survivors and for victims across Arizona. I cannot thank Senator Boyer and Senator Heather Carter enough, as well as with the Democrats that stood with those two warriors in this effort to get this bill passed. And to the governor, Governor Ducey, who also signed this bill into law and has committed to a task force that is really going to focus on this problem. Passing the bill isn't the end of this. It's just the beginning, and the governor is committed to learning more about this issue and helping Arizonans out even more. Because of this legislation, I hope that the people of Arizona realize the national leader that you have all become. It is an amazing bill that was passed here in Arizona, and hats off to you. That's why I'm here with Jeff Anderson. This is something that's been needed to happen in Arizona for a long time. And finally, we got this across the finish line. There are Arizonas who are currently preying on the children in Arizona. That's what needs to change. This bill is not about the Catholic Church. This bill is not about the LDS Church. This bill is not about the Boy Scouts. This bill is certainly not about USA speed skating. This bill and the work of Jeff Anderson is exclusively about protecting kids. It's to help survivors come forward, to help survivors heal, to help survivors seek justice, and to have their voices and our voices heard. That's why we're here today. And that's why I say thank you to Arizona for passing this bill. I've learned a lot about your state since I've been here, including your 5 C's, and I feel like you should add a 6, and it's compassion. And I really, really thank you, Senator Boyer and Senator Carter, for all of their work to get this bill passed.
Bridie Farrell, as a survivor and advocate who really helped advance the law here that really opens it up for survivors to identify those that both harmed them and those that chose to protect those offenders. We're thank you to you and, of course, all those that passed that law and gave this chance. And you and other survivors like you a voice that
and that's what we're going to see. We're going to see a groundswell of strength and courage from Arizona, of voices that are going to come forward, and it's just going to make it safer for everyone.
Thank you, Bridie. Tim Lennon, step forward, please. I'd like you first, by way of introduction. Tim Lennon is a survivor of priest, and also the president of the board of Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests, an advocacy organization, and has thus been a survivor advocate for many, many years. And you live in the state. Tim Lennon, what do you see the significance of both this disclosure that we're making today and the law that has now been passed as it pertains to survivors and child protection. Tell us what we really need to know about this.
Well, I think it's important that it provides a path to justice for survivors. Up until now, there's been limited opportunities for survivors to step forward. It also protects our community. It protects the children. We look at each of these names, 100 names there, we could see 10, 20, 100 children that are abused by each one of those. That means that so many people are being harmed. And as long as this information is buried, then our communities are not safe. So I commend Jeff and his work and his crew in bringing forward these so we can make our communities safer, so we can bring justice for survivors, and hopefully we can hold these predators, these vile predators, accountable for their crimes. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim Lennon. And as we assemble and issue this report, we also know that there are so many more clerical offenders out there that have been accused and or abused that are yet to be revealed. And so this is a part of a process in which there can now be accountability and transparency. And this is just our best effort to engage in more transparency than what the Catholic Diocese has chosen to do. Bob Pastor, please come forward and have a word here. Bob Pastor, as you all know, has been a very prominent voice, advocate, and lawyer working with survivors for many, many years in this area, and giving them voice, and knowing that many of the doors to have been shut in the courthouse, and now that that has been opened. Robert, tell us what you think folks need to know about the new law and what we're sharing today.
Sure. Just briefly, for those of you, like Bridie mentioned, that think this is about the church or about the Boy Scouts, it's not. It's about making a space that's safe for survivors of sexual abuse. And when we celebrate heroes, when we think of courage, survivors of sexual abuse, in my opinion, are among those people who should be celebrated, because what they do is heroic and what they do is courageous. And so I'm honored to stand here with these two survivors, because I know from my experience how hard it is for them to come forward and how difficult it is for them to put their face here. And so I applaud them, not only for the work they've done to this point, but for being here today. I'm grateful to be able to be here. I've been a prosecutor and I've been in civil practice, and I've been doing this for the last 17 years. And something that I've learned that's been confirmed by academic and medical studies is that we know that children will disclose sexual abuse when they know and they feel it's safe. This legislation creates an environment where survivors know and will feel like they are safe. And we're here to stand with them and say, you know what, you are. We are here with you. We believe you, and we will stand by your side as you tell your story. And so we thank you all for coming here to be a part of this presentation. I want you guys to know, as journalists, it's important that you're here telling the story, because these dirty and dark secrets, they fester and they spread in darkness. And we need you to shine a light on something that has been plaguing our society so that our children are safe moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert, for the work you've done with survivors for as long as you have. And we're also grateful that our firm is now partnering with yours to help survivors both give voice and hold those responsible for grievous harms accountable. And it isn't just about what has been, it's really about what can be. That means protecting kids in the future. That's really what it is. But until we expose those who would harm and have, we can't know that our communities are safer. B. Mendoza, would you come forward as a Spanish speaker? Just give us a summary of what has been said here so that we can have more said about this in Spanish.
Buenas tardes, estamos aquí hoy porque la Diócesis de Phoenix dio su propia lista de perpetradores que han abusado a niños. Esa lista es más corta de la que tenemos nosotros. Ellos dan 40, 42. El reporte de Anderson tiene 109 y sabemos que hay más. Les pedimos que por favor sean transparentes y que den la lista de los que han abusado a los niños. Y estamos aquí también para hablarles sobre la nueva ley que pasó que protege a los sobrevivientes. Yo como sobreviviente, esa nueva ley a mí me va a dar voz. Esa voz porque las estadísticas dicen que cuando un niño ha sido abusado, ese niño va a hablar cuando se sienta seguro. Y esta nueva ley no solamente les va a dar voz, es una oportunidad para que ellos se sientan seguros junto con otras víctimas que estamos aquí. Y eso no es de la Iglesia Católica, no es de los Boy Scouts, esto es de los niños. Queremos que haya un alto al abuso a los niños. Y solamente les pedimos a la diócesis que sean transparentes y a los que nos están escuchando les decimos que por favor nos llamen porque esta ley no solamente les va a dar voz, los va a proteger y ustedes pueden presentar una demanda hasta el 31 de diciembre de 2020. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, B. Mendoza. I'm going to call on you, Pat Wall, as a former priest who now works with and us and on behalf of survivors. From the perspective of a former priest, what is significant about what we're trying to do today and what brings us together with other courageous survivors that stand with us today?
This report has been a long time waiting. There have been some excellent survivors because this is timeless and it's timely. It's timeless in the sense that some of you may remember Father Emmett McLaughlin from years ago, who is, a person who cried for justice. There have been many whistleblowers and people who have spoken up. There have been many families, parents who have come forward over the years. What this does is it provides a base of data so that you can see where the priests actually were. You can see exactly when they were there, and you can do your own analysis of where they came from all over the world, literally. That's why this is a unique data set. And this is not just about the Catholic Church. This is about institutional response to childhood sexual assault. And you can see how the patterns and the practices work. So it's colorless that way. It's non-denominational, and it covers a 50-year period. And that is what will help, I believe, not only parents, grandparents, but also prosecutors, federal prosecutors as well, to understand how institutions respond to this chronic problem that we have in our culture.
I want to, I'm just going to grab this. I want to draw attention to a couple things. The first is that of the 109 that we've identified here in the histories that we have disclosed today, there are 62 that are deceased. And there are those that say, well, then why would you identify them? And the reason is that what they did while they were alive and in the priesthood is still alive and evergreen in the souls and the spirits of so many survivors who are suffering in silence and or secrecy. And it's time for their names to be known so survivors can know they're not alone and it's not their fault. And they no longer have to live in secrecy, shame, or silence. Because the law can protect survivors in a way it never has before. And survivors can come forward privately as Jane does, right? Or as John does, and take action and do something to recover your own power. The second thing I really wanted to emphasize about this is that 44 of these individuals who are identifying here today, we don't know their whereabouts. They could be your neighbors, and they could be any one of the people working in our schools or in athletics or anywhere as we speak. And so not having their identities discernible to us is alarming. We do know and have the locations of 29 of these individuals, and we track them. And we will continue to release this information as we assemble it. And we'll also invite the Catholic bishop here to be even more transparent than he has been by releasing many more names that I think he and they know have worked in this Catholic diocese because they are record keepers. And we also know the history in the Diocese of Phoenix is less than admirable. We know that former Bishop Thomas O'Brien admitted under threat of prosecution, and as a result of prosecution, that he, while Catholic bishop and a former official of the Catholic Diocese in Phoenix, he said, I acknowledge that I allowed Roman Catholic priests under my supervision to work with minors after becoming aware of allegations of sexual misconduct. I further acknowledge priests who had allegations of sexual misconduct made against them were transferred to ministries without full disclosure. We share his words because it really is a demonstration of a practice that has been employed. And while Bishop O'Brien was in charge in 1984 to 2002 or 3, that is a common practice that has been employed across the state and needs to be named and it needs to be called out because it is reckless and dangerous, and our concerns about that practice continue. I've been working with survivors for 35 years, and I have no less than a dozen of these individuals that have been on our radar who have been moved in and or out of Arizona, who have been identified as child molesters publicly, no less than a dozen that we become aware of. And for that reason, we consider these disclosures to be imperative in child protection. With that in mind, Bridie, come on up here, and Robert, let's take questions, and we're open to them.
Mr. Anderson, first off, could you help me understand? The diocese says anyone credibly accused is on this list. They also say that no one from 369 is on this list, because then it was the Phoenix diocese didn't exist before that. Some of the people on your list were pre-69, and how many of them are post-69 who are credibly accused, and do they have a different definition of credibly accused? Help me understand the numbers, because you can't compare apples and apples the way you've done.
Well, first, the question is the Catholic bishop said that they have listed those that are credibly accused, and only since 1969. And that means that he has drawn what we consider artificial lines that are more likely to protect the Catholic diocese than the kids. Why do I say that? When they say credibly accused, those are the ones that they chose to believe were child molesters and thus add to their list. We know from the grand jury report in Pennsylvania that less than 1 out of 5 reports that are made are deemed to be credibly accused by the Catholic bishops that preside over that. And so their determination about credibly accused is not a basis for which them to withhold that information. The second thing is to limit it in terms of time. When a child is abused and the harm is done, the suffering that they engage in is not limited by time. It's a lifelong sentence. And to say that they're going to cut it off in 1969 because that's when the diocese was established is an artificial line that protects those that have offended and the Catholic diocese from making a full disclosure. And so we believe that we need to get the names, the identities, and the histories of all those offenders, even before the diocese was created, but worked in this area, out, at least known as publicly accused. And so I think it comes to ultimately what is better to protect the kids and identify the hazards in the community and allow the survivors to know a more full truth. And so the bishop's position is self-limiting, and in many ways we're critical of that practice employed by him and others like him because it's really a half-truth.
Jeff, how many of these names were not disclosed by the diocese before? How many of these are new to us?
66. We have added 66 names that have never before been disclosed by the Catholic Diocese in Phoenix. So of the 109 we report today, 66 are names that have never been publicly disclosed in one format or by this diocese. And 66 is the number of new names.
Are some of those names on the Gallup and the Tucson diocese list, which are public?
The answer,
Those are the two that predated the Phoenix diocese. And
Right.
that's why I was.
So let me give you a concrete example of
I want a specific answer. too.
certainly.
Of this 109, how many are on either the Phoenix, the Tucson, or the Gallup list that has been publicly disclosed? Because those are all three public lists. The predate 69 are in Gallup and Tucson diocese, and the Phoenix diocese is post 69. Are these 109 names? How many of them are on one of those three lists? Because that's the only way you can really compare, right?
no, that's not the only.
But that's the specific question I'm asking.
The question is how many names are on the other lists from Gallup and or Tucson. I don't have the answer to that, but what's the more important thing is that the names be disclosed publicly, and if somebody wants to know where and if there is overlap, it's easy to look at those lists.
To give you the concrete example, sir, that you can go check on yourself, and there's two that come to mind. I don't think he's on here, but Father George Pirrung, Pirrung, was originally a priest of the Diocese of Tucson. And this area, which is now, Phoenix, was a part of the Diocese of Tucson. And in 1969, when it was erected, Father Pirrung was here, I believe, working at St. Catherine's. And he simply one day became a Diocese of Phoenix priest, and he remained. And so he didn't move from Tucson to here. He was already here, and the diocese lines shifted itself. Father Doran, Doran, he was at St. Thomas the Apostle. Same thing. He was a Diocese of Tucson priest who was here when the diocese was erected, and so he became a Diocese of Phoenix priest. And so publishing a more comprehensive list that may overlap between Phoenix or Tucson and Gallup is important because this diocese was created out of those two. And some of those priests who were abusers continued to abuse in this diocese. The only thing that happened was the label under which diocese they were working changed. And for those of you who are interested, Father Pirrung lives in Cottonwood. He's alive. He's been defrocked, and he continues to live in neighborhoods where children are playing. So that's information this diocese should publish and make known, so that the people in those neighborhoods know that that man is a danger.
Bridie Farrell, I do want you to have you address because you worked with the legislature and allowing this window to open, and the window for survivors to actually take action, legal action, is open until December 31st, 2020. Tell us the significance of that, and as a survivor, what it is that can be accomplished and, for survivors to take advantage of the law that's now been passed in Arizona.
Right. So we refer to it as the window. And what we mean by that is as soon as the governor signed the bill here in Arizona, effective immediately, survivors like myself, whose statute of limitations had previously told, now have the opportunity to come forward and file a civil suit in the state of Arizona. That suit can be against the abuser and the institution that facilitated that. Again, this isn't about the Catholic Church. I'll speak to my personal experience that I was abused within the speed skating community, the Olympic Committee, in 1997. In 1990, the United States Olympic Committee was made aware of my abuser abusing another young girl. So, Yes, the abuser is at fault, but so are all the adults and all the grown-ups along the way that allow this individual to meet multiple girls over the course of time. And what this bill does for 18 months allows people to come forward and to seek justice for ourselves and healing for ourselves, to stand in the court of law with the help of people like Jeff Anderson and call our abusers and name them accountable. But what it also does is it identifies these people. And it makes our streets, it makes our churches, it makes our synagogues, it makes our skating rinks, it makes our pool decks safer. And when we say and we encourage people to come forward and speak, as a survivor of child sexual abuse, I want to be the first to let anyone know who's watching this that we are not asking you to stand in front of a microphone. And that many, many, many civil suits are filed underneath Jane or John Doe. And that is an option. This isn't about publicly calling things out. This is about individuals being able to have healing and peace with what has happened in them. And so Arizonans, whomever was abused in Arizona, whether you live here or not, whether you've moved away, whether your abuser has moved away, you, for the first time in your life, have the choice if you want to proceed. And so I encourage everyone to seek out that choice and gather the information about whether or not they want to file a civil suit. And you have 18 months to do so. My phone can't stop ringing.
So the question was.
The question is
what is the response?
What is the response been since this bill has been passed? And people have, Bridie Farrell is an odd name and an odd sport, so I'm easy to find. So people have found me and contacted me, thanked me for speaking out, thanked me for coming to Arizona, and asked me, what can I do? How do I come forward? Do I have to stand in front of a microphone? All the things I'm saying them of what I've previously answered in the last month in Arizona. It's been overwhelming. It's really gratifying and emotional for me. But there's just been, when I was in the legislature, I went to the Senate and 3 senators came down and told me their stories.
So it is about the peril that is both past and present, and the law protecting the survivors and survivors' privacy, to give them and the survivors a chance to take action, to find voice, get help, hope, and healing, and to have the courthouse doors open to them in a way
In the way that they want, in the way that they are comfortable.
When they are ready. And of course, there is some limitation on that until December of 2020. So thank you to the survivors who share their secrets, who stand with us today, and the advocates that speak with and for them, and sharing their truth, because there is now an opportunity that didn't exist before for more to be known and kids to be safer. And we're grateful to stand with you, Bridie, and the other survivors here today.
Jeff, is this a news conference to shed new light on a law that passed a month ago? Or is this an opportunity for your law firm to get free publicity to get clients?
This is a lot of things. And what it is our effort to make disclosures based on the information that we've been able to assemble across this country about a very dangerous practice that is employed by Catholic bishops in America and in Phoenix and in Arizona. And that practice is to hold secrets and not come clean with offenders. That's why we've issued 25 reports across this country, and we'll continue to assemble them as we can. We also take this opportunity to stand with survivors, and Tim Lennon come forward to make it known to survivors that something can be done to protect the kids in the future, and there is hope. And Tim Lennon, what say you to this?
Well, I think it's incredibly important that there's opportunities like this to bring before the population about the statute of limitation reform, provide that path for justice. I believe that it protects children when you have this kind of disclosure, this opportunity to speak. So I think it's incredibly important for the state of Arizona to make our communities safer, because without the work of Jeff Anderson, we wouldn't know about a lot of these predators. We would have no path for justice for these survivors, who, most of them, 80%, never come forward. Sexual abuse survivors rarely come forward. So when we do a public event, it provides an opportunity for them to step forward. Maybe not through legal, but it may be an opportunity to speak to a family member, or to a friend, or to a counselor. So it's not just a matter of the legal thing. Is how do we protect children? How do we hold predators accountable and those institutions that cover for them? And how do we make our communities safer? So I think it's an amazing event.
Yeah, I want to answer. I'm going to repeat and answer the question. And the question is, Jeff Anderson, AKA trial attorneys, is this why you're here? And I'll be the first to answer that question. I'm 37 years old, and there's one man in this country, Jeff Anderson, who's been doing this as long as I've been alive. Without people like Jeff, this law wouldn't have passed. I came forward 6.5 years ago, and I called a list of attorneys. No one would help me. 8 months, my abuse happened in New York State. 8 months ago, I called a list of attorneys and no one would help me. All of a sudden, the bill passes, and that's when this room fills. We've been trying to pass this legislation in Arizona for years. Yes, these names are from before 1969 because this problem has been going on for years. Call them what you want, but it is attorneys who are here helping survivors. We are locked out of the courthouse in a criminal system. These are the brothers and sisters that are bringing us to justice, that are illuminating who these abusers are in our society. This is not about a lawsuit.
It really is about the survivors, the
Passionate
courage
about
of the
that one.
survivors who have shared secrets and now have a chance to do something more than they could before, and having their truth known and their truth validated, and them knowing that they can do something to protect other kids in the future. That's why we're here, and that's why we share this journey in deep gratitude to every survivor that shares his or her truth, and is now has the chance to take some action they never could before, and know the law allows it. Anything else? Robert Pastor. We are done for
Nothing.
today.
Thank you.
Thank you, survivors.
Can I quick address the Tucson issue? Because I have a survivor I've been speaking with that has.
Sure, Mary, please identify yourself.
My name
and
is
then
Mary
tell us.
O'Day, and I'm the local leader for SNAP in Phoenix. And I have a survivor in my group who was abused at the same school I was abused at by a fellow priest of the one I was abused by, but it was 3 years before I was abused. So he is technically under the Tucson Diocese, which filed for bankruptcy. How they can do that, I don't understand, because the Vatican still has money, but that's another story. So he's trying to get help. He's trying to get therapy. He's trying to get somebody to listen. Phoenix sends him to Tucson. Tucson says we're bankrupt, send him back to Phoenix. And he is just stuck because they're doing this cover up dance, and it's not under our diocese. So same school, same priests.
Let me ask a question.
So it's time for truth. And so you have a question, sir.
Yeah, after we're done, I'll follow up.
Thank you, sir. It's time for the full truth, and it's time for the chance of the survivors to have their voice heard and acknowledged and affirmed, and be able to do so without being harmed further, and protect the privacy of every survivor that needs to have his or her survivor protected under the law. That's the way it should have been, but that's not now the way it is. And there's great hope, and there's great promise, and there remains great peril. That's why we're here. Thanks all.
One more question. Real quick, to be clear, the new cases that came out that you're highlighting here, have they been investigated already? I'm not real familiar with that.
This question is about the 109 that we're identifying here. Some have been prosecuted, some have been investigated, some have been declined to be prosecuted. Most have never been publicly disclosed, except for in various places. And this is the first time there has been any effort made to do a compilation of all those that have been publicly accused for the last 5 decades. And for that reason, we still know this isn't the full truth. This is just what's available to us today. And the journey for full disclosure and the identification of the offenders in the community, not just clerical offenders, remains um, um, uh, work to be done. And it will be now that there's a chance for more accountability, more transparency, and compelled disclosure instead of allowing secrecy to continue and the peril to be as prominent as it has been. So thank you all.
Sir, shortly, it's that investigation starts now. That's what this is about. Unearth all of this data that has been buried for too long. And that's what we're doing. And that's what we encourage victims to do.
Ask if there's anything needed to be added. There are no